Hey, everybody. Just a quick note. Today is Friday, November 17th, and the interview that you are about to watch with Nick Butterworth about the B-Sides comic um, project that they are currently doing. We mention, or he mentions, that they were working with Dex Carvey, Dana Carvey's son, on the animation part of the project. And not even 30 minutes after we had wrapped up our interview, the news came across about Dex's passing. And so I just want to, maybe add some context that, we didn't know what had happened when we were doing the interview. And I wanted to share what the B-Sides crew are saying about Dex on their social media. So let me just share my screen. You can also find them on their Instagram. It is B-Sides Comic. So there we go. I'll let you read it for yourself. And again, we're sorry that this tragedy happened. And so I just wanted to provide a little bit of context in case somebody may have noticed it. So again, just want to say enjoy the interview. It's still a good interview, and please support the campaign. Thanks.
Hey, what's going on? What do you got there, Gus?
It's a B-Sides comic.
No way. So, what's the scoop?
We're in it, man. Check it out. We got Bodie, Nacho, Debs, Sheena, Open Mike. You and Sketch are in it, too.
Hold up. What about the Riff Rats?
Yup. Crazy Riff Rats, their speakeasy bar and everything. They're all in there. Hey, there's some pop-up scenes as well. Look, I'm scanning Dex, Mike, and Nolan. They're in the booth over there, deep in convo. What are they talking about?
Dude, my dreams are gnarly, man.
Yeah. Really?
I have a dream lot of I'm in a plane crash, and it's the same. It's going into a city.
Oh, man, we're in. So, where do we get this?
Only on Kickstarter.
All right, welcome back to the show. Today on the Comics Multiverse, we are talking with Nick Butterworth, who's involved with the Kickstarter B-Sides. So it's I'm not going to do the talking. I'm going to let Nick tell you about it because, he knows more about it than I do. But we have featured it on the Comic Watch crowdfunding corner last week, and it'll be there again this week. But and it seemed like an interesting project, and I was able to work with the group's PR, and we got Nick here from across the pond. So let me bring him in, and we'll find about him and the project. How's it going?
How's it going? Yeah, good. Thanks for having me. Strange to be talking about an LA-based comic book with a British accent, but we're going to get there. We'll cover everything as we go through. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, before we get started talking about the Kickstarter, tell me a little bit about your history with comics in general. Do you remember maybe the first comic book you read, or maybe the one that kind of got you interested in more of the more of them.
Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, my first comic book as a kid would be the Beano, like a very old publication in the UK, a weekly, very thin, but all the classic characters from Dennis the Menace all the way through, like the Bash Street Kids. I remember having a subscription to that, being very young and just totally absorbed in the story. I mean, nowadays you'll see so many threads about what hooks you into a comic book, whether it's the art or the storytelling, and there'll be debate raging for a long time. But I was all about the storylines. I love seeing, even though it was just a little slice every week, that little slice of life of all these characters that never really sort of tied together, and they just disappeared and started again as if they'd never met, and sort of carried on from week to week. That was my first sort of real contact with comic books. So I had a subscription to the Beano, and I had Dandy as well, and that was kind of just me in isolation for years as a young boy. But then when I got older, I started seeing friends who were developing more taste into it. So that's when like the Batmans and Watchmen started kicking in. So not really stuff of my own, because I was quite sporty. I was going off and doing loads of things with friends, and I occasionally found one or two friends who were really deep in comic books, and that's what kind of sort of brought it back to me at a later date, if you like. So I kind of a traditional kind of classic entry into the world. Look, certainly, what we've done here with B-Sides is a little interesting in that we feel like there's a whole lot of representation in comic books, and there's some very, very well trodden genres out there. I've just referenced DC. I've just referenced the sort of Beanos of the world, but what we think we're doing is slightly different. It's more of a niche. Like, you look at it and it's a real love letter, and a nostalgic love letter to that sort of simplicity of that time I've just described, when really the only thing important in life when you're a teenager, late teenager, young adult, is to hang out with friends and make fun. And the day could go anywhere, and you've got, well, I'm talking now as a nearly middle-aged man with 3 kids, and no less spontaneity in my life, but that sort of freedom.
Same here.
Go and, that real freedom
just the one kid. But
yeah. But it's that idea of someone comes up with a stupid or dumb idea, and everyone just gets behind it because we're all friends, and the most important thing is like seeing where someone's idea goes, and letting a story just meander and take its form as the day passes. That's B-Sides to me. That's kind of what we've put together here. It's a bunch of people whose main aim is to just hang out and see what opportunities come of the day, rather than any sort of real drive. And that's the slice of life I think we're describing, which I think I got from the Beano, certainly. And Greg, our co-creator, who isn't here today, so he's just recently had surgery, so sadly not on today's stream. Very much the driving force behind some of the personality in these characters, I think, comes from a very similar place, where things like skating and surfing in the 90s were a really big part of his life, the music scene in my life particularly, and we've sort of melded all of these sort of late childhood, early sort of adult passions and put them into a time and a place which we remember really fondly. And in this case, it's an homage to sort of 90s LA. We've referenced Dogtown very, very slightly in different points in the sort of early pitching of this to you guys, and I think you can see some of those influences in the way that the characters behave, the way that they interact, and what their days look like as well. I think we've really tried to make not so obvious references, but they're there. And if you were into that sort of thing, and the 90s, you'd certainly pick it up and see those aspects in what we're trying to express here, which is really we hope to be a very long series about friendship and the opportunities that come from prioritizing that as the reason for really existing, and that's what Sidetown is to us. It's an imagined part of LA, but like we say, we've got lots of very nostalgic references mixed with a little bit of modernity, so we're trying to capture a slightly bigger audience than just a bunch of wistful old men who who got married and settled down and wish they could still skateboard without breaking both ankles.
Yes, I never skateboarded, but I am at that age, also at that age where it's you got to be careful what you do. But so,
They say you never
but
lose it, but my kids have boards, and I can trust me, you can lose it.
so how did well you've kind of given like the elevator pitch for the for this project, and I would also say you've kind of given a what it kind of influenced its creation. So as the video that played before we started talking, who are the main characters, and you know, are there are how many are I mean how many characters do we follow throughout the book or
Sure. So we've got a core cast of, well, I say something in the region of. I think we're thinking sort of 2-3 comics ahead in our brain here. But volume 1 that's out on Kickstarter now really follows the lives of 6 main characters. We're looking to really introduce something in the region of 10 by the time the story evolves into volume 2 and volume 3. And the way that we've laid this out, the first volume is going to be a 60-page piece with 2 major stories and a couple of, again, very short vignette slices of life that really four or five sort of surface level pages of little insights into the world of some of the sideline characters. But the core of this is all centered around the bar in Sidetown, the B-Sides bar, and you've got the barman in there, Gus, who really is like the beating heart of Sidetown. He's the guy who everyone comes to when they've got issues. He's like the glue that really sort of bonds the community, and it all starts in the B-Sides bar. Everything always comes back to the bar. It's a bit like Cheers, You've always got your regular guys who you can reliably see there on a Friday night. Whether it's out on the bench at the front in the case of Slippery Kev and Sketch, who are pretty regular outside, who they just pitch their spot at the bench at the front. You've also got the record exchange down the road, so we're kind of building this street, this picture in this world of Sidetown. Down the street we've got a record exchange, and that's run by 2 partners, Sheena and Debs. And they bring some pretty interesting characters through there as well, because they pick up rare vinyl. And then there's all sorts of artists and interesting, cool people that come through on a cameo basis through the record exchange. We've also got Bodie and Nacho, who are surfers who opportunistically set their taco truck up in loads of different spots around Sidetown. And there's a bit of a running theme with those guys that they often get quite creative plans for how they're going to make their schemes up for the day, their money for the day, and it generally blows up in their face. And that's kind of the theme that runs into Bodie and Nacho. They're just 2 guys who just want to kick back and have fun, and they don't often think through what they're doing, and it sort of fails spectacularly at times. So they're a nice sort of light relief, I guess, for some of the slightly more in-depth scenes. So we've got a few like I say, main guys here, but one of the really interesting pieces of B-Sides for us was that we started thinking about the human characters and drawing initial concepts and getting the sort of style of how we draw these guys together really, really clearly. And in the background, we would often drop in some rats. It was kind of to convey this sort of slightly rundown part of this imagination of LA that we put together. And the more people we put this in front of, the more people pointed at the rats and started to ask us all these questions about the rats. And we initially didn't think of them. They were sort of to convey the scene rather than to become characters in their own right. But over time, they just became more and more of a story because more and more people gravitated to them. So we built a whole world around the riff rats, as we call them, the riff rats, and they've got a whole subset, a whole world that sits below the B-Sides bar. In fact, they literally have their own speakeasy under the floorboards. We've sketched out everything that they operate down there, and they run they run a tight ship down there. They've got a whole bar set up that's away from prying eyes. And they've got a separate language. We've gone into really explore the characters of these individual rats rather than just being one common theme of interchangeable rats. They have their own roles and personalities in their sub-society, but they're extremely useful and resourceful. And we find out in one of the main stories in Volume 1 called Pot of Gold, as they operate a warehouse across the street from the bar, which is shrouded in secrecy, and we pull the we pull the curtain back on their operations and what they've been doing all this time. A couple of people can interact with them, and again, we've got some secrets to reveal there in terms of what happens to people who can suddenly speak riffraff, and the world that they're embroiled in suddenly is explored in the first story. So we've had a lot of fun with them, and we weren't expecting it, but it's just become one of those really pleasant side effects of the creative process, where you don't expect to suddenly be having adult conversations about rat personalities, but we're in it now, and there's no turning back.
And I mean this as a compliment when I say it, but just listening to you talk about that and maybe I'm going to age myself also, but it's like I get the feeling like it's how the rats are in like the Muppets, like the different Muppet movies, where they're just kind of like doing their own little thing, but also interacting with the story at the same time, and I love that.
Yeah, they're totally happy to just mind their own business and run their world. They're self-sufficient. They don't need us humans. And at times we interact with their world, and it's usually to our benefit, not theirs. And I think we've had a lot of fun playing with that and realizing actually that there's a lot out there that we don't understand, but has a lot more depth than we could ever realize. So that's been a huge amount of fun.
So how did a couple of people living in the UK end up setting a comic in LA? I'm just using two letter So.
It's a great point. Greg's to blame for this. So he's more traveled than me, and he's lived in several different places around the world. He's from New Zealand, so he's naturalized in the UK now, but he's a man of the world who spent plenty of time in lots of different parts of it. I've traveled but not settled and lived in other places, and we've got some common interests out there. So again, he was in his youth a big surfer. I skateboarded. I played the sport, which you kind of touch on a little bit in some of the side stories, and was huge into my music scene. And the two of us can point back to certain bands that we can reference or have the same sort of love for, like the Pixies. They get a little subtle nod in there as well. We've tried to bring it up to our, rather than just our frame of reference in the 90s, what else do we listen to and respond to now as well? So there's a little bit of modern stuff in here. There's a bit of rap in here as well, which is much more reflective of modern society than perhaps that little slice that we were focused on when we were harking back. But yeah, what we've done is we've taken bits of shared cultural appreciation, but realized that the center and the home for that actually sits thousands of miles away from either of our birthplaces, and paid respect to it in a way that I think we will always have somewhat of an interloper view on Dogtown and sort of living and breathing it, but we'll always feel different because listen to me, I can't pretend to be from anywhere else. But at the same time, I think certainly Greg has an extremely good insight into the workings of sort of day-to-day life back then in a way that can be pretty authentically replicated in the way that the characters speak, the way that their days evolve, and sort of their general outlook on life. I think what we've been really clear on when we've been describing Sidetown within B-Sides is that the guys on this side of town have no aspirations of making it in LA on the sort of fame side of town. They're not guys who've dropped out. They're not losers. They are exactly where they want to be, away from the bright lights, and just carving out that real authentic life that gives them sort of the freedom to just pursue all their creative interests in a way that perhaps isn't so much keeping up with the Joneses in the way that the sort of high society of LA would expect people to live. So it's a real, like I say, a love letter to that kind of society that I think often gets overlooked when you look at a lot of the things LA's famous for as well. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure to pay tribute to some of those themes as we sort of think back to how we grew up and the kind of things that we were really drawn to as well, particularly with American culture.
So tell me a little bit about the rest of the creative team and how you met up with them, or got connected with them to bring everything together.
Yeah, sure. So we started out with a relatively small team. We met a scriptwriter, a guy called Mike London, who is doing our long piece content right now. A phenomenal guy with a great creative mind. He, again, another guy from the UK who has been brilliant for us in things that I wasn't expecting from a scriptwriter, like storyboarding. We've got a whole art department, and Mike is a huge part of it. Even though he's producing some tricky areas of script, he's actually quite good at visualizing what that script should look like in storyboard form for our main artist as well, Rich Evans, who is I'm blown away by his talent on a daily basis. I am not an artist. I'm much more sort of scientific analytical brain. Much as I have an appreciation for the creative arts, you could give me an infinite amount of time, infinite amount of resources, and I still could not put together a piece of work that Rich can pull together in 15 minutes. It is mind blowing what he can do with a pen, and yet there are times when the two of them work better together, because Mike will have a brilliant segment of storyline to flesh these characters out that Greg and I have, and particularly Greg has laid down for everybody, and bringing it to life via the scriptwriter sketching is quite an interesting way of thinking about it. We don't know how everyone else typically runs their comic ship. We've got to be really open and honest at this point. We're all first time contributors to the comic world, right through from founding creatives like Greg to Mike and Rich. We are doing this for the very first time, so we might have quite unorthodox methods for how we all put it all together, but it seems to be working very nicely, because once we've got that initial sketch, Rich just goes and creates some unbelievable magic with his pen. And some of these meetings have been quite chance. So we actually started out with a different guy called David, who was helping with the original fleshing out of the characters, sketching them out and giving us a real early visual sense of where we were going with B-Sides. We gave a lot of cultural references. We gave a lot of personality information to really sort of support the kind of attitude and vibe that these characters would finally finish as. And I think the thing that David really helped us with, particularly in those early conversations, was how to convey a lot of emotion without ever showing a pair of eyes. So anyone who's seen a preview of our art style on Kickstarter will know that we've got a very consistent house style where we never show any one set of eyes, and there's a whole bunch of reasons behind that, but essentially it's really just to let some of the rest of the scene take over and really sort of take in the whole thing, rather than necessarily focusing on the individual faces in the scene. And it's actually been quite an interesting creative challenge once we decided we were going to commit to this, where you were never going to get the full extent of people's visuals, so you had to convey emotion in lots of different and subtle ways, whether it's obviously through speech, clearly in the storytelling, but in the body language as well, and some of the scene that goes around it is much more painstaking, because you're trying to evoke the same amount of emotion from a scene as you are when you're given the full facets of what you'd normally use to rely on for showing that. So we've had quite a bit of fun there, and as I say, David was quite helpful in the early runnings to help us to set those styles up. And when he moved on to other stuff, we were introduced to Rich via Instagram, which was very unexpected, but a brilliant encounter, because he also works with an animator, Theo, who is doing some of our multimedia content as well. So one of The quirks, I suppose, unique aspects of Volume 1 is that we are interspersing it with QR codes, which you scan, and then they take you to animated shorts, which are expanding on the scenes that you will see in some of the storylines in Volume 1. So we have essentially an animation department as well as an art department for the comic. And we have enlisted some incredible help on that side to bring these characters to life. So we've used and been again a chance encounter via DMs to be exposed to a amazing comedy trio in LA called Third Wheel Comedy, run by Mike Mazziotti, Nolan Culver, and Dex Carvey. And Dex is the son of Dana Carvey of Wayne's World, Saturday Night Live legend fame. So we're so lucky to have these three creatives in our midst who are taking some of our core characters and narrating them and bringing them to life in these 1-2 minute short scenes, whether it's something as simple as reviewing Bodie and Nacho's tacos from the truck, and they're all kicking back and giving a sort of 1 minute snap review, right through to a sort of sequence in the bar where they're talking about their dreams from the night before. It's this sort of what it's really helping us with is really setting the vibe of these kinds of characters who are, again, they're not necessarily driving a real sort of juggernaut through the storylines. It's lots of little subtle slice of life references all the way through the series, and the animation really helps us to convey that better. And like one day, overly ambitious as it is when you're launching one comic on Kickstarter, it would be wonderful if we could branch out into more animation and over time develop that into its own series and find a way of creating this sort of multimedia verse of B-Sides, because we've always felt like, great as it is to use the comic medium that we're all so passionate about in bringing Volume 1 to life, the more we've got into animation, the more we've realized that there's something in this with particularly with the guys that we can harness on the comedy side to voice these and flesh these guys out. So yeah, we've got lots of things to consider as we go into Volume 2 and 3, which we've already started as well. We've got a good with all the storylines are laid down for Volume 2 already. Good amount of art is already complete for one of the stories. So we've got some interesting ways of bringing that to life again with these QR codes. So we've had a lot of fun there, and it's a huge amount of gratitude for Dex, Nolan, and Mike spending their free time to take on some of these slightly wild and wacky characters that we've put in front of them. But they're so up for it. They're awesome at throwing themselves into character.
Yeah, the QR codes were something I wanted to, obviously you mentioned it, but that was one of my questions, because it seems like a nice way to make the book more interactive, and something that is real. I haven't seen used yet in comic books, and it's a very interesting thing to incorporate into a book. So I'm interested.
The way we looked at it as well is we're unknown. We have no pedigree, we have no track record in the comic industry. We're guys that have come from regular jobs doing completely different things, and we need to stand out in a way that really showcases what we think we can bring to the space. And in doing that, it also lends itself to the virality of modern social media and the way content's consumed. We know that if we can put together something interesting for 60 seconds, we can reel that, we can clip it, we can put it into TikTok, we can use that in Instagram Shorts. We know that there's a market out there for very snappy, short pieces of work that grab attention. And if that grabs enough attention, that means, hey, there's something worth following here on Kickstarter, or whether there's something in print form that I could get my teeth into, well, that's fantastic. And then again, the same for the reel being the gateway into something longer form, even if it's YouTube content where we're animating an entire stand-up routine from Third Wheel. Well, great, because we've suddenly opened up a slightly different route into our B-Sides bar, where these guys are written into the story around our open mic night in the bar on a regular weekly basis. So we've got a character called Open Mike, who is open in nature as well. He's too open, and he overshares, and he stands on stage and he talks and talks and talks and talks so much, in fact, the guests that are meant to come on fall asleep in the back or get too drunk on the side, and he just gets himself tangled in a knot of talking about his personal life for an hour, and everyone all the regulars know this is coming, and they're used to it. But if anyone from outside is swinging by, they're just they're confused, and we get into that a little bit in Open Mic's opening story, which we're actually going to spread over multiple volumes, starting with volume 1, and just tease a little bit of the opener and the kind of world that Mike can create around him. So again, yeah, we just had a lot of fun talking about the kind of lives that each of these characters live in parallel to one another in quite a small community, but very supportive community. So yeah, we end up these guys end up making mistakes, but they all end up okay in the end, is kind of the general premise of how we want to treat these creations.
So let's talk a little bit about the Kickstarter itself. What are you offering for the different reward?
Sure. Yeah. So we've got
a lot in front of you to go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a lot of the very standard stuff you'd see from most comic Kickstarters. We've got print form, we've got digital form, so you can pick up a PDF or a physical print. So we will be shipping those completely separately, or you can bundle, and then that's where it starts to get super interesting. So again, like a lot of comics, we have variant special edition covers. So that's where we've got quite creative, because what we've done with the variants is we've actually been a little bit opportunistic with the way that we've approached some celebrities, should we say, some slightly semi-interesting people out there. I don't want to start reeling all the names off right now, because some of them we messaged and said, hey, we are making a comic about sort of nostalgic music from the 90s. We think you'd be amazing if would you be happy if we drew you in the comic? And we don't know to what extent we're stepping boundaries legally in terms of using image rights and representation. So we've had some replies that say, please go for it, and thumbs up. And we've gone and created a character that has a subtle nod and a reference to that real life person. And in some cases, we've had a much more formal, approval to use their name and their likeness in a story. So we've got a bit of a sliding scale that we've used in some of these variant covers. So you might see some familiar people from the world of skating, from the world of music, and we've tried to, where we can, really showcase some of these interesting people that have either just given us the green light to use them, or want to be more involved than that. And so we've got a real variety of styles, whether it's skateboarding or BMX. On one of them, we've got a pinball machine from Revenge of in LA, which is an awesome little cameo reference to a bit of local LA culture as well. So we've got some good ideas out there, but they all stand alone in the way. In fact, one of them is related to a storyline too. So we've got 6 different covers, and you can buy them all together in a collector's pack as well, if that's what you're interested in. We've got art prints made by our lead artist Rich Evans as well, and posters. And then we've got a couple of really nice special edition reward tiers, where we also bundle it with a piece of special edition B-Sides jewelry made by a London jewelry artist called Kelly Onlychild, who has a massive cult following in the worlds of music and fashion. And some of some global pop stars like Rita Ora have worn her pieces in the past. So she's got really accessible prices, but it's worn by some pretty amazing people. So we are super excited to have Kelly's work on board, and she's designed 2 different pendants in our style. We've got a riff rat on one side, and our B-Sides logo on the other. That's the main pendant that we're giving in the ultimate rewards here. And then there's a separate palm tree, which is the sort of Sidetown evoking picture on one side with B-Sides on the other. So super grateful for her creative time on this as well. And we're just so happy to be able to put her name to it in some small way and showcase what she's capable of, because she's awesome. And, you know, we've put her in the Sheena and Debs's Sounds Good record store as well, which is right at the back of the store in a little pop-up. So she's actually got a comic book version of herself and her dog in a pop-up store in a comic series, as well as her real life product on the Kickstarter. So yeah, we've been a bit creative with a couple of them and tried to really put their personality into the comic and into the reward tiers as well. So yeah, that's got 20 more days to run. We're working in pounds. The company that is behind the comic book is based in the UK, but all the printing and distributions from the US. So we might look at doing that slightly differently for volume 2, because it can be confusing. We have a goal of £2,500 on Kickstarter, and we're just short of £2,000, which is like $2,500. So we're trending in the right direction. We hope to be fully funded very soon, and with 20 days to go, we're feeling good about that. So it's been a real nervous time to put a bit of yourself out into the world like this and see if people are interested in it. But we're so grateful for the responses that we've had so far. We've had so many pledges, and we're just blown away by the reaction from people taking a look at the art and the particularly the animation content as well, because that's an easy way of digesting what we're about. But yeah, we've got some work to do. It's still a busy time. The next 3 weeks are critical. So yeah, bring it on.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, how about you give one more pitch for the book, and where people can go to find out more, like social media and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, B-Sides to me just feels like my home from my late teens and early adult life. It's sort of takes me back to a time when nothing else really mattered other than just hanging out and doing what you love the best. So our characters are really passionate about what they do, whether it's skateboarding, art, music, surfing, you name it. It's just been loads of fun to inhabit that world again and bring it to life. And if that's the kind of thing that you can recall from your own life, I think there's going to be something in it for you. These guys are unconventional for sure. They're alternate, and there's a countercultural world that we've built here. But there's a whole lot of optimism in the story. We're taking advantage of opportunities, sure, but that sort of unplanned chaos is what I think lots of us thrived on when we were young, and it's a real supportive and positive way of drawing those good qualities out in people and putting them out there for the world to see. So we're just proud of what we've achieved for our first ever go at this, and we're only going to get better as we evolve into future volumes. So we're just super excited to get it out there. We've got another maybe 2-3 months of work before we can start pitching for Comic 2 as well. So yeah, stick with us. If you want to check us out, we've just routed the bsidescomic.com URL to the Kickstarter for the duration of the campaign. So in the next 3 weeks, you actually can't access the website, which is by design, because most of our pitch on there is the same as it is on Kickstarter. But we've also got B-Sides Comic on Instagram and at B-Sides Comic on Twitter, or now X. And we're experimenting with TikTok, but we're just trying to get that off the ground before we start sharing that more widely. Okay. And that's kind of us. Like we're gonna share the YouTube channel as well as we start to get up and running with the animated content once the QR codes are in people's hands as well. So there's plenty to come from there, and that channel will be called Sidetown Comics. So that is us on social.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time, because I know it's fairly late over there where you are, and so I'll let you go. But best of luck as the campaign continues, and if you're more than welcome to come back when you're doing the next volume. Not only can they check you out on Kickstarter, but I will also be tracking you on the Comic Watch every Saturday on our Krowdfunder corner, which I put together. And so we'll that's where this interview will be. Well, if you're on the Krowdfunder corner, then it'll be there, but I'll also send you guys the link so you can put it up wherever you guys want to put it up. So, but I want to thank you for taking the time. And this looks like a really, fun, innovative comic that, people I think should really check out and, support.
Thank you, Chad. Thanks for your time as well. You've been a great host to a first timer over here. So thanks for guiding us through this world of media. We're stoked to be doing it at last, but yeah, we're still learning.
All right. Well, I will let you go. And, again, it was a pleasure talking to you, and we'll be in touch.
You too, man. Thank you.